Tell you something. If you two never bother me again the rest of my life, I ain't giving them pension. I can't. There's good friends of mine out on the say. Well, he's divorced, we'll have to do it tough. That's why I said to you before, you don't understand what the money. The most means that the boss is your boss.
And welcome back to Mob Talk Radio. So we're going to get into Williams' kind of question, and we're going to cover this in two parts. I'm not sure how far we're going to get because I still want to finish up the waterfront stuff. So this is probably going to be longer than I really need it to be, but this is going to come from a March 1980 report on organized crime's infiltration of the pizza and cheese industry. This is going to take part in New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and New York as well. So the Pennsylvania Crime Commission documented the ties to organized crime and the allegedly legitimate cheese and pizza business, which were located in 54 different Pennsylvania cities and towns. This report is going to follow a sort of a 2-year investigation that was done of the pizza and cheese business in Pennsylvania and its ties to organized crime figures in the state and other states and even into Canada. So this is a big thing. The widespread illegal activities of the controllers of these businesses, according to the government, had cost Pennsylvania taxpayers millions and millions of dollars in the state, local, and federal taxes, and provided safe harbor for hundreds of illegal aliens, driven out legitimate businesses in competition, and took human life through murder and arson. And if this sounds familiar, remember my buddy, the Pietro Catone, and what they did? This is very similar to that. And they provided millions of dollars in cash for organized crime. The report was never really intended to be like an analysis of the investigation into the cheese and pizza industry as a whole. But like we said, it has a lot to do with organized crime. So the report established for the first time in history the actual control and ownership of these operations, which was fully examined through corporate records and through the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. So skimming. The Organized Crime Commission found through that investigation, and they established that there were interlocked businesses that were routinely engaging in identical and continuous skimming of millions of dollars of cash income every year. And basically, you know, we know the process of skimming and why we do it, because it defrauds tax agencies of tax payments and creates the need for higher taxes on people that actually run legitimate businesses. We've talked about that before, but sort of an example of a big skimming operation would be something that was ran 6 years by Antonio Stabile, who was part owner of the Italian Delight Pizza Shops in King of Prussia, which was located at the King of Prussia Mall in Montgomery County. And it's estimated that in those 6 years alone, Stabile skimmed nearly over $1 million in cash from the shop's income. The Pennsylvania State Crime Commission investigation determined that Stabile and his shop manager made regular exchanges of small denominations they made small denominations of money for larger bills at a nearby bank. Those larger bills were never included in the shop's bank deposits. The amount of money that was exchanged and then skimmed from the shop's income totaled $1,000 to $8,000 a week, which in most instances was more than the total monthly sales reported to the management of the King of Prussia Mall, as is with the case with most small shopping centers and et cetera. And you have to really look at the lease arrangements, but a part of that rental payment that they pay every month is figured on the monthly sales receipts of the tenant. So if he's showing, well, we only made X, Y, and Z, then they can only be charged X, Y, and Z. So by skimming cash, the pizza place is actually defrauding the mall in addition to the government, which is expecting taxes. Stabile, who is never a United States citizen, according to the FBI, who testified at the State Crime Commission hearing on January of 1979, sold the Italian Delight pizza shop in June and left the country. So once he get caught, he said, fuck this. But the skimming practice of Stabile's Italian Delight is similar and very identical to those at more than 75 pizza shop locations investigated by the Pennsylvania Crime Commission. So the conservative estimate anyway would indicate that nearly $4 million annually in unreported cash income was skimmed from locations examined by the PCC, which is the Pennsylvania Crime Commission. Considering the limited nature of the investigation, the Pennsylvania Crime Commission estimates that more than $20 million in annual cash income is skimmed by organized crime-controlled pizza shops in Pennsylvania. So as far as illegal aliens go, we're not talking about the kind that kidnap men in West Virginia and stick their fingers in rectums. The network of organized crime-controlled pizza shops serves as a readily available employment haven for mobile force of illegal aliens. In the first 10 months of 1979, more than one half of the illegal aliens arrested in central and eastern Pennsylvania by the Immigration and Naturalization Service, the INS, were picked up in pizza shops. In the 5 years prior, more than 100 illegal aliens had been arrested in eastern PA shops. The supply of illegal aliens provides organized crime with manpower and slave labor cash wages. The illegal aliens who work and live sometimes at these pizza shop locations investigated by the PCC are not listed as employees, have no social security identification, and therefore do not exist for tax purposes. The illegal aliens must comply willingly or unwillingly with the practices of organized crime and eventually become part of the system or risk exposure and certain deportation. Now, that I'm going to disagree with. Listen, who doesn't want to get paid under the table? Nobody's going to force them to go to work. It's bullshit. It's bullshit. Anyway, so Stefano Sciarrino, who was employed at the now-closed Pizza Palace in Levittown, was arrested in 1972 as an illegal alien. One of the owners of the pizza shop posted his $2,500 bail in cash. Sciarrino pleaded guilty to entering the United States illegally. He was then deported on completion of his sentence. On January 4th of 73, Stefano Sciarrino was found in the parking lot of a Bristol restaurant, bound and executed in gangland fashion. La Riviera Pizzeria of Phoenixville, which is in Chester County, is an example of how pizza shops included in this report managed to function in normal business-like manner by utilizing workforce which, according to the government, didn't even exist. In 1973, the only wages reported to the government as being paid to employee was $4,300 in salary to the manager, and yet 2 or 3 of his people working at the shop at all times. Some of those non-existent employees were observed, along with the manager, by Pennsylvania Crime Commission investigators. The investigation determined that they made cash exchanges at a local bank. These exchanges were part of a regular skimming practice. In the apartment across the street from the Village Mall in Horsham, which is in Montgomery County, was home for illegal aliens working at the Roman Delight pizza shop at the mall. Because organized crime network recognizes the necessity of mobility in the legal alien market, it is extremely difficult for INS to crack down. However, the agency did manage to arrest one such alien at the Village Mall Roman Delight shop. None of the aliens were reported to the government or taxing agencies as being employed at the shop. Arson. The report to the Pennsylvania Crime Commission on the 2-year investigation includes 20 arson suspected fires at Pennsylvania pizza shops. Pizza shop arsons are responsible for at least 4 deaths and have proven to be an effective means of dealing with competition and profitable means of closing out an operation at the expense of the insurance company. In an apparent attempt to limit competition, the Little Italy pizza shop in Pottstown was firebombed 3 times in the first 10 months in 1975 as it opened for business. 2 arsonists were killed in July of 77, firebombing a pizza shop in Ambler, which was also in Montgomery County. 2 more arsonists died in the explosion which swept a downtown Pittsburgh pizza shop exactly 1 month later. And a confessed arsonist testified at a trial that he believed He was to have died in the fire that he set in Hazeltown pizza shop in September of 1977. So, a rash of pizza shop arsons and the resultant death precipitated the Crime Commission's investigation into organized crime's involvement in the pizza and cheese business. So that's where this all started from. Near the conclusion of the Crime Commission's investigation, other organized crime figures who worked at Pennsylvania Pizza Shop was killed. July of 1979, organized crime leader Carmine Galante and his bodyguard and part-time chauffeur Leonardo Coppola were assassinated in a New York City restaurant. Crime Commission agents determined that Coppola maintained an apartment in Chester, Delaware County, and had worked at a nearby pizza shop before his murder. Which, that's a fucking stretch. What does that got to do with nothing? So, what is the control and sort of manufacture and distribution in the cheese industry? And that's really what we're talking about. In Pennsylvania, 2 major cheese and dairy operations are touched by organized crime. One is the victim, and the other is the distributor of cheese produced by a Canadian firm with multiple ties to organized crime. The Farmers Cheese Co-op in New Wilmington and its parent co-op were victims of hundreds of thousands of dollars in an elaborate scheme set up by the Falcone brothers of Brooklyn, New York. The Falcones have been associated with the Gambino criminal organization, which continues to operate pizza shops in Pennsylvania and in New Jersey. B&T Cheese of Hellam, which is in York County, PA, is one of only 3 United States distributors of cheese which is made by G. Saputo and Sons of Montreal, Canada. The Saputo company is directly linked to Joseph Bonanno and the Bonanno crime family. B&T Cheese of Hellam is considerably more than a local enterprise that has been favored by the Saputo company. Joseph Borsellino, an officer of Saputo Cheese, is the brother of Laborio Borsellino, the co-owner of B&T Cheese of Hellam. The B&T Cheese was listed as part of another company which had applied for permission to build a cheese plant in St. Albans, Vermont. In August of 1978, Vermont officials rejected the proposed cheese facility because of its ties to organized crime. In 1978, the son of Joe Bonanno, Bill Bonanno, admitted to a Vermont News reporter that his father was directly associated with Saputo Cheese. Saputo, in turn, had direct business ties to B&T Cheese of Hellam, PA. Additionally, another legitimate business, Pizza Hut. You guys ready for this? Pizza Hut has been victimized by organized crime in Pennsylvania. February 20th of 1977. Thieves stole $150,000 of pizza supplies from the Pizza Hut warehouse in Langhorne, Bucks County, Pennsylvania. The Crime Commission investigation determined that the stolen supplies were sold to pizza shops in Pennsylvania, New York, and New Jersey. These 3 instances are examples of how the mob has struck and infiltrated the Pennsylvania and the pizza business community. So, in conclusion of this portion of it, albeit manufacturers, wholesales, and distributors operated by organized crime in Pennsylvania and elsewhere now control a substantial part of sales and deliveries to legitimate pizza shops, in addition to those shops already under the ownership and control of organized crime. So, tax evasion, illegal aliens, blah, blah, blah. But according to the U.S. government, the minimum estimate is $25 million in annual unreported income in Pennsylvania just in regards to pizza shops. So the Crime Commission's final sort of probe really confirms that organized crime, connected pizza, and the cheese business have made large amounts of money in PA, New York, and New Jersey, and use organized crime tactics with connections. With this cache of large money, these businesses have been able to expand their operation into other states. So what I have sitting in front of me is a chart. They have a fucking chart which shows pizza shop expansion and growth from 68 to 79. And I will post this photo on our Mob Talk radio page on Facebook. And I will post this photo on our community page on YouTube as well. And it just shows really some interesting shit. It just shows how they began in New York, New Jersey, went to Maryland, went to Virginia, West Virginia, Ohio, Indiana, Iowa, Minnesota, California, Colorado, to Texas, to Florida, to Puerto Rico, and they're all owned by organized crime. It's unreal. So I'm going to hold that off. Head over to Mob Talk Radio on Facebook or on the community page, and you can see that little diagram that some schmuck from the FBI brought up. So when we talk about the infiltration and control of sort of the pizza industry everywhere, there's a lot of different things. And obviously now you understand how functionality it works. But March of 1980, there was a substantial number of the retail pizza shops in central PA and in eastern Pennsylvania that are controlled by organized crime. So when people say they're not in central PA, you would be wrong. The control of this direct to the public business sort of followed after major criminal organizations had taken over manufacturing and the distributing aspects of specialty cheese and pizza supply businesses. So the investigation that took place was prompted by a rash of arsons, murders, and fraudulent business practices, which Pennsylvania considered to be massively economically harmful to the state. The control of the industry has reaped enormous amounts of unreported cash for organized crime, and the continuation of that illegal cash flow is guaranteed through illegal tactics in the marketplace: death, arson, insurance fraud, economic loss, and higher taxes for everyone. The actual control of the cheese and pizza business begins with Joseph Bonanno, who is now living in Tucson, Arizona, and is still regarded as one of the most powerful leaders of organized crime in America. Well, he wasn't. You got that wrong. But Bonanno initiated a conspiracy to control the specialty cheese business in the United States going back as the 1940s. And even today, he and his associates control the activities of the largest, most prosperous specialty cheese companies. Bonanno has direct ties to Grand Cheese of Wisconsin, through it, Grande's exclusive distributor in the Pennsylvania area. Ready for this? Roma Foods of South Plainfield, New Jersey. And through that distributor to hundreds of retail pizza shops, which have been financed and controlled by organized crime, and etc. And let's see. There's a little notation here, and it says Joseph Bonanno Sr. was indicted by a federal grand jury in Northern District of California, along with Jack DeFilippi for conspiracy to obstruct justice. DeFilippi was also indicted for perjury, and the indictments handed down April 26 of 79 are pending. So, as well as just what we just mentioned, Joe Bonanno has been associated with, like we said earlier, G. Saputo and Sons Limited of Montreal since 1964. This is a major Canadian, obviously, cheese manufacturer who has been a substantial supplier of the pizza industry in the United States and has significant influence in the operations of its American distributors. B&T Cheese of Hellam is one of only 3 U.S. distributors for the Bonanno-related Saputo company. Joe Bonanno's involvement in the activities of these companies and the company's other ties to organized crime figures have led Vermont authorities to reject the application of Jolena Cheese Company for the construction of a cheese plant in the state. Jolena Cheese was a newly formed corporation which had been created by Saputo and B&T of Pennsylvania and other Saputo distributors, California olive oil. B&T Cheese of Hellam is influenced by Saputo through the owner of B&T. The Pennsylvania company is owned by Laborio Borsellino and Peter Taroso. The Pennsylvania Crime Commission's investigation has led it to cooperate with New York State authorities in a current investigation into other Saputo-formed companies. Okay. Gotcha. Okay, so remember when I mentioned the pizza shop chain growth and expansion from 68 to 79? This was all controlled by Joe Bonanno. So when I post this to Facebook later on today, you can head over there now as you're listening. This is what Joe Bonanno owned, and you can see the migration. It's insane. Just absolutely insane. So let's see. Where are we at? Let's see. Hold on. What is this about Utica? Okay, so Saputo, another foreign company, which was by the name of Utica Cheese, was also owned by Joe Bonanno, and they also had applied for a license to operate a cheese plant in that state. So, the Falcone brothers of Brooklyn, New York, formerly associated with Bonanno Tide Grande Cheese, and partners with a Grande officer in other Wisconsin cheese companies, built and operated for a decade a network of fraudulent paper companies which designed to produce millions of dollars for the Falcones, only to collapse financially when challenged by the claims of their legitimate business victims. Farmers Cheese Co-op of Pennsylvania was one of the victims. Farmers Cheese Co-op of New Wilmington suffered severe difficulties in what had begun as an apparent legitimate proposal by organized crime control companies to purchase substantial quantities of mozzarella cheese. The Lawrence County Co-op began doing business with the fraudulent companies after its marketing agent and parent co-op, Valley Lee Dairies of South Bend, Indiana, had agreed to an initial purchase of specialty cheese by the organized crime-controlled business fronts. The Falcone brothers, Vinny and Joe, constructed their fake business empire so that on paper, the complete it appeared as an attractive new major customer for legitimate cheese manufacturing companies such as those affiliated with Valley Lee Dairies. So, but in reality, what the Falcones had really done was they formed a system to produce millions of dollars for themselves, confuse the suppliers, and insulate themselves from any financial risk, and eventually cause a whole lot of fucking damage financially. Early in 1974, the Falcones approached Valley Lee officials and proposed to buy a substantial amount of mozzarella cheese from their various 13-member co-ops. Valley Lee was impressed with the opportunity to make a ton of fucking money, and so they began negotiations with the Falcones. After beginning negotiations as Falcone Dairy Products, the Falcones switched before signing the agreement to the name of Falcone subsidiary Lido Cheese. Again, the Falcone switched before signing the name to another subsidiary, the United Cheese Corporation. After accepting the initial shipment of cheese from Valley Lee associated co-ops, the Falcones established themselves as a major customer for cheese produced by another Valley Lee co-op, Farmers Cheese Co-op of New Wilmington, Pennsylvania. So beginning in October of 1974, the Pennsylvania co-op manufactured mozzarella cheese with the supervision and outdated equipment supplied by their new customer, the Falcones. Sounds a lot like what Paul Castellano did. Because of the poor condition of the Falcones' equipment, Farmers Co-op replaced it with new equipment and was instructed by the Falcones to ship the old machinery to Badger State Cheese Company in Wisconsin. Shortly after, Farmers Cheese of Pennsylvania and other Valley Lee associated co-ops started doing business with the Falcones. So they make one great business deal. Everybody says, wow, these guys are movers and shakers. So now they just start signing up with everybody. So they start doing business, like I said, the Valley Lee with the Falcones, and the comptroller for the Valley Lee recognized the instability of the financial arrangement with the Falcones. Through a memorandum to Valley Lee, the controller wrote, "This is getting very confusing. These people, the Falcones, should be a bill for a cash with order basis only. With this letter, I'm going on record that we do not sell these people another pound of product until their account is paid in full." So they're borrowing on credit. This whole thing scares me to death, and I feel like this is the thing we have to do. So in an effort to resolve the financial issues with the Falcones company, a representative of Valley Lee met with Vinnie Falcone concerning the non-payment for cheese products produced by Farmers Co-op of Pennsylvania. The resolution to the collection problem resulted in the creation of additional difficulties for Valley Lee and therefore Farmers Co-op. What happened was the Falcones agreed to pay 1% monthly interest charge of overdue accounts, and that way the co-ops could collect from the Falcone clients if payments fell further behind, and the co-op secured a $100,000 mortgage on a certain Falcone cheese-making equipment. So at the time, Valley Lee was owed almost $300,000 by the Falcones for cheese produced by Farmers Co-op. The Falcones then resorted to claiming that they had received substantial quantities of bad cheese and demanded credit against their account. After experiencing continuous stall tactics by the Falcones, The Valuely executive officer Everett Meeks wrote a memorandum to the comptroller Dale Chapman. My own evaluation is that we are in deep, serious trouble with this account and that they are keeping themselves alive through cheese we have furnished. For that, we would not have received a single fucking payment. In desperation, Valuely foreclosed on the $100,000 mortgage they held on the Falcone's equipment. They attempted to directly collect from the Falcone customers and brought suit against the Falcone companies in New York State. All of this activity commenced and began on 1975, only 15 months after the start of the co-op's business arrangement with the Falcones. And this is what happened. So Valuely suffered a 13% decrease on the value of preferred stock, and associated co-ops suffered severe financial problems. The Falcone companies, United Cheese and Lido Cheese, immediately went out of business. Falcone customers claimed credits for bad cheese or claimed they had already paid the Falcones, and the equipment, which had been secured by a $100,000 mortgage, was bought for $6,000 at auction. So they burned it out. After 4 years legality and through the courts, Valuely and its member co-ops have won somewhat of a victory against the Falcones. In July of the following year, New York State Supreme Court signed an order confirming the referee's report and entered a judgment against the Falcone brothers for nearly almost $700,000. The major portion of that judgment was the claim for cheese produced by the Farmers Cheese Co-op of New Wilmington, Pennsylvania. Valuely officials informed Pennsylvania's Crime Commission that they have difficulty executing anything on the judgment. And that investigation continued to go on, and it turns out that Vinnie Falcone was, at this time of this report, employed as a plant supervisor and a sales broker for La Roma Cheese Company of Hazleton. The Falcones have promoted similar schemes in the Wisconsin and Minnesota in association with Thomas Gambino, nephew of the late organized crime figure Carlo Gambino. Earlier, the Falcones had established another subsidiary company, Alberg Creamery, in Alberg, Vermont, and quickly established the creamery and the Falcone Dairy as major customers of the legitimate Milton Co-op Creamery. Using the same non-payment techniques and claims of bad cheese, the Alberg Creamery had built up a debt of more than $500,000 to the Milton Co-op and other suppliers before it was destroyed by a fire. Subsequent suits and other legal actions eventually led to the conviction of Joe Falcone and his office manager for bankruptcy and fraud. So the PCC investigation has determined that the Falcones and Thomas Gambino drove another company into bankruptcy in 1976. In December of 75, the Falcones and Gambino bought 70% of the stock of the previously owned Badger State Cheese Company in Luxembourg, Wisconsin. 8 months later, Badger State Cheese collapsed in disarray with $1.3 million in debt. So the Falcones and Gambino had essentially taken over Badger and arranged that Capital Cheese of Brooklyn, New York, be the major customer and distributor for Badger. Capital Cheese of Brooklyn was operated by Joseph and Thomas Gambino. Joe Gambino was a leader in the Carlo Gambino crime family. Capital Cheese directed delivery of Badger State Cheese to Capital's customers, collected payment from the customers, and then the cash disappeared. When Capital Cheese owed Badger State Cheese $560,000, Badger Cheese closed down. The Wisconsin State Department of Agriculture placed the company in a trusteeship. Capital Cheese, the Gambino-owned business in Brooklyn, has since disappeared. So the Pennsylvania Crime Commission investigation, in addition to establishing the fraudulent nature of the Falcone's enterprises already mentioned, established yet another scheme which has been referred to the jurisdiction for further investigation. Let's see. In December of 1974, one of the Valuely member co-ops shipped more than 150,000 pounds of mozzarella cheese to Long Island, New York client Cremosa. The cheese was too soft to be sold as first quality cheese, but had value as a second quality cheese suitable for grading. Cremosa sold some of the cheese as salvage and asked the co-op to take back 104,000 pounds, which had not been sold. The Falcones, learning of that situation, approached Valuely and offered to buy the cheese, which is already located in New York. Valley Lee, which had already experienced the Falcones' non-payment practice, refused unless the Falcones paid cash in advance. As a favor to Valley Lee, the Falcones stored the Valley Lee cheese in their United Cheese warehouse until they had the money to buy it. In October of 1975, Valley Lee officials discovered that their cheese was no longer in the warehouse, but had actually been stored in a warehouse owned by Hall Street Cold Storage Company of Brooklyn. To further surprise, it was discovered that the Falcones had borrowed money from the Hall Street Company using the Valley Lee cheese as collateral. When the Falcones refused to pay the loan, Hall Street Company, assuming the cheese belonged to them, auctioned off the cheese to recover the debt. Valley Lee lost $55,000 and 104,000 pounds of cheese because of the favor bestowed to it by the Falcones. Let's see. So, the Falcones owned pizza shops in Philly and New Jersey, but have since sold their interest. The Falcone Pizza Company Corporation, King of Pizza, used the same Brooklyn, New York address as the Falcone Dairy. Falcone Realty Incorporated handled the leasing agreements for King of Pizza shops and owned buildings, which it leased to others at the pizza shop locations. The Falcones owned property at 1636 Market Street in Philadelphia, which they leased to the Gambinos of Cherry Hill, New Jersey, who operate father and son pizza at that location. The Gambinos of Cherry Hill are cousins to the late organized crime figure Carlo Gambino and are associates of the Philadelphia Mafia leader Angelo Bruno. Falcone associate Charles Scardino, who was the president of United Cheese and the founder of Lido Cheese, owned a Falcone pizza shop, King of Pizza, at 1231 Market Street, Philadelphia. The Falcones sold their pizza shop on Germantown Avenue in Philadelphia to another relative of the Cherry Hill Gambinos. The Falcones were involved with two pizza shops operated by Frank DiLorenzo, a member of the Gambino crime family. DiLorenzo is one of the major pizza shop operators in Pennsylvania and other states in the Northeast. Roma Foods of South Plainfield, New Jersey is a major pizza shop supplier in the state of New Jersey and Pennsylvania area. Its founders and presidents is Louis Piancone. Roma Foods is rapidly expanding its operations from its base in northeastern United States. Roma Foods took over debts, accounts, and the warehouse of Primo Foods of Jacksonville, Florida in June of 1978, and shortly thereafter opened its Dallas, Texas warehouse under the guidance of Piancone's son-in-law, Joseph Pica. Roma Foods is a full-service supplier of pizza shops and the sole East Coast distributor for the Bonanno crime family's grand cheese, does business in cash. In addition, Piancone has loaned substantial startup money for pizza shops in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and New York. Competing suppliers say that it is impossible to crack Roma's market of 650 accounts in Pennsylvania, New York, New Jersey, Delaware, Maryland, and Virginia. I got a funny story about this I'll tell next week about Roma Foods. The Crime Commission investigation has determined that Piancone loaned $100,000 in cash and $95,000 in supplies to John Scotto of Voorhees Township, New Jersey. Scotto has opened three or more of his 25 pizza shops in Pennsylvania and New Jersey. Piancone's other loans are $10,000 to Frank Galafaro of Springfield. Galafaro was a partner in the Italian Delight pizza shop chain. $15,000 to Franco and Biagio Esposito, owners of pizza shops in Reading. Loans to Francesco Romanato, who is no longer a resident in the United States, who used the money to establish his Italian Delight pizza shops in Easton, and loans to Salvatore Polizzi to establish Pizza World in Devon. Polizzi's brothers own Pizza World and are paying off a $112,000 debt. Piancone was also a partner in the company which opened pizza shops under the name Pizza Como USA. There were about 10 Pizza Como locations in Pennsylvania in the Lehigh, Northampton, and Berks County areas. Piancone is no longer associated with any of those shops. Although Louis Piancone disclaims any association with organized crime, the Pennsylvania Crime Commission investigation established and proved that Roma Foods has had business relationships with the Falcone Dairy of Brooklyn and Joe Bonanno. Roma Foods has had business relationships with Ferro Foods of Brooklyn, which is owned by Frank Ferro, nephew by marriage of the late Carlo Gambino. Oh, God. Frank Farrow is also associated with the Falcone brothers and participated in the scheme to defraud Valley Wheat Co-op. Roma Foods has had business relationships with the Roberts Food Corporation of Brooklyn, which is owned by a member of the Colombo crime family. The most incriminating tie to organized crime is the fact that Roma Foods utilizes its services of Salvatore Profaci as an enforcer of territorial rights and full-time consultant. The who's who, you know who, and you know what is controlling all of this shit. The Crime Commission investigation has established that Joe Profaci, hold on, did I read that? Did I even write that down right now? Salvatore Profaci is a member of the Colombo crime family and son of the legendary Joe Profaci in New York, has threatened other suppliers and has handled labor union disputes from Roma Foods associated with the company in New Jersey. So in other words, get on board or you're not getting your fucking deliveries. Get on board and buy this cheese from this mob-controlled company or you ain't going to have no fucking cheese. So now do you guys see how they control the flow of everything? None of this was a surprise to me because I knew Pete Catone and I knew how everything worked. He explained it to me. Profaci, whose first contact with Roma Foods came in 1971 as a representative of Grande Cheese, which was a Bonanno-owned joint, has an office at the Roma Foods warehouse. Employees and suppliers of Roma have told Pennsylvania Crime Commission investigators that Profaci seems to control the company. Profaci is also listed as a sales agent for Listani Foods, which is associated with Roma Foods as a northern New Jersey pizza supply distributor. In 1976, when 8 non-union truck drivers for Lasante Food became resistive about poor working conditions and low wages, Profaci showed up at a meeting between the Lasante brothers and the drivers. Profaci told the drivers to forget about joining a union and then worked with Armand Castellito, who was a business agent of the Teamsters Local 560 in Union City, New Jersey, and to make certain that the drivers would be unable to organize or else. Local 560 has been under the control of organized crime since the late 1950s when Anthony Tony Provenzano took control of that union. Provenzano was an officer in that union until 1978 when he was convicted of ordering the killing of another union officer. Provenzano remains a prime suspect in the investigation of the 1975 disappearance of Jimmy Hoffa. His 23-year-old daughter is now secretary-treasurer of that local. So the NLRB, the National Labor Relations Board, eventually investigated the labor disputes and found that Armand Castellito was negligent because he didn't tell the drivers that their company was recognized the union. He withdrew the drivers' petition to make the union regional without the drivers' knowledge. He did not inform the drivers that he would be unable to be contacted during a time of critical discussions between the company and the drivers. Following Profaci's labor relations services for Lasante Foods, Roma Foods became the sole supplier to Lasante for imported products, and Lasante Foods became the sole distributor for the Profaci-owned Sunshine Shortening Products Company. So, during the investigation, there's been all kinds of issues, obviously, we've talked about that were raised, and we're almost done, guys, for the first half of this. The investigation revealed that Roma Foods was paid, that they didn't pay any corporate taxes in PA except for 2 years and has not paid sales tax in New Jersey since opening in 1966. So the final determination of corporate tax liability of an outside corporation it's a really complex thing, and I don't kind of want to get into all of that, but in the case of Roma Foods, Roma employees take orders, collect payments, and adjust accounts for Roma Foods in Pennsylvania. The fact that Roma Foods established an account with an Allentown bank after one of their drivers had been robbed of $15,000 in cash in 1971 is pure evidence of the collection practices of Roma truck drivers. The account enabled Roma drivers to deposit money locally to avoid risk of robbery in the course of their deliveries. The bank account, which is still open but inactive, carried an average balance of $250,000, which enabled P & Cone to establish $600,000 line of credit with Allentown Banks, which was terminated by the bank in 1978. Based on those activities, one could make an argument whether or not Roma Foods really has any, corporate tax liability in the state. But There's some factual findings. So Louis Piancone's younger brother Michael dissolved his relationship with Louis in '67 and has become a major pizza shop supplier and franchisor in Pennsylvania and in New Jersey. Michael Piancone's businesses include M. Piancone. I'm not going to read his fucking businesses. That's not cool. Let's see. So one of the other things is that Michael Piancone's pizza palaces have been involved in illegal alien traffic and narcotics trade. Piancone was convicted in '73 for arranging the marriage of convenience, a fraudulent marriage to keep an illegal alien in the United States. One illegal alien that was employed by Piancone Pizza Palace in Levittown was found bound and murdered in Bristol, Pennsylvania restaurant parking lot on January 4th of '73. The murder victim, Stefano Schiarino, had been awaiting deportation after having been arrested and sentenced in December of '72 for having entering the United States illegally. Schiarino had been sentenced to serve 6 months in prison and was fined $5,000. Schiarino had been released from jail after his arrest when $2,500 cash was posted as bail by Matteo Salina, who was with his brother Salvatore. They operated several Piancone pizza palaces, including the Levittown shop, which employed Schiarino. 2 major narcotics convictions have resulted from arrests involving Piancone pizza palaces. In '73, in New Jersey, Piancone Pizza Palace was the base of operations for narcotics smuggling by Filippo Casamento of Brooklyn, New York. Casamento was convicted for his role in that operation. In September of '71, police arrested 3 men in New York and confiscated 86 kilograms of pure heroin with a street value of $40 million. One of the men arrested, Frank Rappa, was driving on an automobile owned by the wife of Matteo Salina. Rappa, who once himself operated a Piancone Pizza Palace in Jersey, is serving a 15-year prison sentence for his part in the heroin smuggling operation. Michael Piancone and the Salina brothers were associated with the criminal organization that is with the Gambino crime family. One of Michael Piancone's business associates is Emmanuel Adamita, who owned the Piancone Pizza Palace in Wrightsville, New Jersey, and had also managed the shop in Levittown. Adamia had been a chauffeur for Carlo Gambino's brother. The INS has arrested dozens of illegal aliens in shops run by Adamita. Other members of the Gambino crime family who have participated in the Piancone Pizza Palace ventures are Giacone Campione, Onofrio Milazzo, Antonio Minore, and Vito and Joe Di Bartolo of New Jersey. In New Jersey, there are several Gambino brothers, cousins of the late Carlo Gambino, who have been opening and operating pizza shops all over town, restaurants, and discos, not including Philadelphia, New Jersey, Delaware, and Virginia. As Father and Son Pizza Incorporation, the Gambinos operate Philadelphia Pizza Shop at 1636 Market Street. The Gambinos are also associated with Joe's Pizza, 105 South 13th Street, Philadelphia. Joe Gambino operates Valentino's Supper Club in Cherry Hill, which is a gathering place for big-time prominent figures of organized crime. Manny Gambino, who we've talked about before, is also living in Cherry Hill and was partnered with Joe in Dover, Delaware discos and adjacent pizza shops. The Executive Lounge in the King of Prussia was destroyed by arson in November of '77. The Gambino crime family also owned Sal's Pizza in Delran, New Jersey, formerly operated as Benny's Pizza. It was a regular meeting place for Pennsylvania and New Jersey organized crime figures who operated pizza shops in both states. Pennsylvania pizza shop operators who frequently used Benny's Pizza as a meeting place were Frank DiLorenzo, Angelo Lancelotti, Matteo and Salvatore Salina, Frank Menino, and others. Frank DiLorenzo, who was a major figure in the Gambino crime family, owned or helped establish 20 or more pizza shops in northeastern United States. DiLorenzo, who is no longer involved in the daily operations of these shops, which are known as Frank's Pizza, Frank's Roman Castle, Casa DiLorenzo, or Frank's King of Pizza, has recently begun pizza shop operations in Texas. DiLorenzo's pizza shop operation included the states of New York, Virginia, Connecticut, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Delaware, Maryland, and South Carolina. Domenico Esposito, a former owner of two Reading, Berks County, Pennsylvania shops, told the Crime Commission investigators that DiLorenzo threatened to blow up a pizza shop if Esposito even attempted to open. The manager of a Baltimore... Okay, we're going to stop there because we're going to get into something that we've talked before. And it's worth noting that Frank DiLorenzo according to the government, entered the United States illegally in the 1950s, was deported in 53, re-entered... hey, you're going to love this. And this is a great segue. He re-entered the United States in 54 and eventually became a member of the local 1814 of the International Longshoremen's Association, which controlled Brooklyn, New York's waterfront. It had been headed by Anthony Anastasio. Anastasio's son-in-law and successor as union president is Anthony Scotto, who, as of January this year, was convicted of federal racketeering charges. So, as you can see, the ebb and flow of the pizza show. So we're going to stop there. We have a lot more, guys. It's going to get really in depth of how they control everything pizza wise. So I hope you guys, I'm enjoying this part of it. I love this kind of shit. You know, it's stuff that you might not have known. I knew some of this stuff because, like I said, Pietro Cotone, who I know very well, owned probably a dozen different pizza shops. So his distributors, you ready for this, were Ferro Foods and Roma Foods. The trucks would come in. We knew all of those guys. Bobby, Vinny, we knew all of those guys when they delivered. So there's some personal shit that we can get into next week. But head over to Facebook, type in Mob Talk Radio, and you'll see the picture that I was talking about. It's sort of a diagram. And head over to our YouTube page under Community. And so when we come back next week for this portion of the show, you're going to learn a whole bunch of shit about the pizza stuff. Anthony Scotto, how they controlled everything, pizza shops, Vito Chiaravino. There's just so many people, and you're going to be amazed at the depth of sort of this thing. So we're going to take a break.